In the middle of the night, the water begins to boil. A few seconds later, a very strong smell begins to spread through the room. But this smell has always been controversial. Some people love the smell. Others can't stand it because it doesn't smell like fresh food at all. It is Luosifen. Few people know that when this smell first appeared, it wasn't meant to challenge people's senses. Instead, it came from people's desire for meat during a time of scarcity. The first time you hear about Luosifen, you may find it very strange. Why snails? Why not pork or beef? To answer that, we have to go back to a city in southern China called Liuzhou. In the 1970s and 1980s, Liuzhou was an industrial city. Steel mills, machine factories, and transportation systems were running every day. For people doing physical labor every day, the thing they wanted most after a long day was usually not rice noodles. It was meat. Today, it is hard for many people to understand how a piece of pork could become a luxury. But during the planned economy era, meat was not something you could simply buy whenever you wanted. It wasn't even a matter of price. It was a matter of whether you had access to it. For many families, the most anticipated moment each month was receiving their meat ration coupons. When real meat became scarce, people across society began looking for alternatives. And the snails happened to be right there in the rivers. They were inexpensive. You could even catch them yourself. There isn't much meat on a snail. But it has one important characteristic. When simmered into a broth, it produces a rich flavor. What really mattered to people was not the snail meat itself. It was the broth. Once the snails had been slowly simmered and the broth was added to rice noodles, a simple bowl of noodles could offer the same kind of satisfaction as meat broth. In a sense, the earliest Luosifen wasn't really selling snails. It was selling the flavor of meat. In an era when meat was not plentiful, that was already a pretty satisfying meal. Today, when many people try Luosifen for the first time, they often have the same reaction: too strong, too smelly, too strange. Many people ask, why does it smell like this? The answer is actually quite simple. The secret lies in the pickled bamboo shoots. In the city of Liuzhou, summers are long and humid. Many foods do not keep for very long, especially bamboo shoots. When the rainy season arrives, bamboo shoots grow rapidly in the mountains. But once they are harvested, their flavor begins to change very quickly. So people began looking for ways to preserve them. Fresh bamboo shoots were sliced, placed into jars, and then left for time to do its work. A few days later, the bamboo shoots became sour. The smell became stronger and stronger. Eventually, they could develop a smell similar to overripe or even slightly spoiled food. For many first-time visitors, it doesn't smell like a normal food at all. It's similar to the way some Westerners love blue cheese, or how some Nordic cultures are fond of fermented herring. But for people in the past, preserving food was more important than whether it smelled pleasant. So originally, pickled bamboo shoots were not about creating a delicious aroma. They were about making food last longer. Later, people discovered that this fermented flavor, when added to hot broth, became something unique. The sourness became more noticeable. The broth became richer. An otherwise ordinary bowl of rice noodles suddenly had much more character. Today, Luosifen comes with many ingredients: pickled bamboo shoots, chili oil, tofu skin, peanuts, and pickled long beans. But the ingredient that truly defines the dish is still the pickled bamboo shoots. Interestingly, the smell many people notice today is actually not very noticeable on the streets of Liuzhou. The thing that really amplified this smell across the country wasn't the people of Liuzhou. It was industrial packaging that came later. However, Luosifen is very hard to forget, because the most unique thing about Luosifen is not just its taste. It's that it stimulates multiple senses at the same time. First comes the smell. Once the pickled bamboo shoots are added to the hot broth, their aroma spreads quickly. Before taking the first bite, people have already smelled it. Then comes the sourness. The sourness arrives before the spiciness, stimulating the mouth and triggering saliva. Next comes the heat. The chili peppers begin to stimulate the tongue. The forehead slowly starts to sweat. The tip of the nose begins to feel warm. Then comes the piping hot broth. Steam keeps rising from the broth. You have to blow on it while eating. At the same time, the rice noodles themselves are unique. They are made from rice, more springy than wheat noodles, and more resistant to overcooking. When you slurp them up, they carry more broth with them. Sourness, spiciness, heat, aroma, and hot broth. All of these arrive at the same time. They almost overwhelm the nose, the mouth, and the stomach all at once. What's interesting is that many people don't immediately like Luosifen the first time they try it. But the second time, they find themselves thinking about it. And by the third time, they go looking for it. Because the flavors people remember most easily are usually not the gentlest ones. They are the flavors that can instantly wake the body up. When the body is at its most exhausted, what people need is usually not refinement. It's stimulation, something that can quickly make the body feel alive again. So what many people remember may not be any single flavor in Luosifen. Instead, it's the moment when it appears and the feeling of the body being awakened again. Today, Luosifen can be found almost everywhere in China, but its popularity is not because it's expensive, nor is it because it's sophisticated. One pack of rice noodles, a few seasoning packets, a kettle of hot water. A few minutes later, a hot meal is ready. It's inexpensive and easy to prepare. For the growing number of people who live alone, it's exactly what they need. After the beginning of the 21st century, as logistics networks expanded, e-commerce took off, and the instant food industry grew, Luosifen began spreading far beyond its hometown. It first left Guangxi and spread across China, and eventually entered overseas markets as well. It began appearing in New York, Tokyo, and London. But along the way, some things changed. What many people don't know is that freshly cooked Luosifen on the streets of Liuzhou is actually not very smelly. What really made it smell so strong was industrial packaging. The pickled bamboo shoots used in Liuzhou are kept in fermentation jars, and there is usually not much time between fermentation and cooking. Many of the odors gradually dissipate during washing and cooking. Industrial production is different. A package of Luosifen may need to travel hundreds or even thousands of miles. To ensure that consumers can still smell the distinctive aroma of pickled bamboo shoots, when they open the package, manufacturers seal the bamboo shoots together with the fermentation liquid. Once vacuum sealed, those odors remain trapped in a very small space for a long time. The moment the package is torn open, the smells that have been trapped inside burst out all at once. That concentrated impact became many people's first impression of the dish. For many people, their first encounter with Luosifen was not on the streets of Liuzhou, but in a cramped rented room in a big city late at night while trying to build a life for themselves. What they smelled was not a freshly cooked bowl of noodles. It was a packet of pickled bamboo shoots that had just been opened. In a sense, industrialization did more than replicate Luosifen itself. It also redefined how many people perceived it. But today, few people realize that this food that can now be found across the country originally began as nothing more than a late-night meal on the streets of Liuzhou. Today's Luosifen has traveled far from Liuzhou. It appears on supermarket shelves, in convenience stores, in offices, and in countless rented apartments. But some things have never changed. Late at night, someone will still boil a kettle of water, open the package, and pour in the seasoning packets. A few minutes later, that familiar smell begins to fill the room. Some people think it's too smelly. Others gradually get used to it and eventually can't live without it. Decades ago, workers getting off their shifts on the streets of Liuzhou would eat it. Today, office workers in high-rise buildings eat it too. The environment has changed. People have changed too. But the way a day comes to an end hasn't changed all that much. They don't know one another. They live completely different lives. But during those few minutes when the steam begins to rise, they are all doing the same thing, bringing this day to a close. And tomorrow, life goes on.